matters and the uncensored truth. It's time for the Mr. Chris Show Underground. News and commentary.
Is this possibly the last we will ever see of Thanksgiving in the United States? Well, it could be. Apparently, with all the things that are going on, the powers that be, the deep state, their minions, have said that it's too dangerous to have any kind of Thanksgiving gathering. It's just too dangerous because of the virus. So it's okay to gather in large numbers for anything related to rioting. It's okay to do that. It's okay to have get-togethers like Nasty Pelosi did recently for some of her chummies, which violated the rules in California, where she resides most of the time. Even Governor Newsom in California violated his own rules. But they quickly come back and say, no, you can't do this. Now they're attacking Thanksgiving. So this is not really that new, but this is the next stage to enforce those kinds of things and to train you more. So what they've said basically is there should not be any gatherings because it's too dangerous, right? Well, the underpinning ideas behind this is more of the revisionist history. It's more of getting rid of the past in the United States to make way for the globalist future and the one world everything. So Thanksgiving is just another tool. And back about a year ago in 2019, you can find articles that put down Thanksgiving. You can find articles before then saying how it's racist, how it's wrong, all these problems, of course. If it doesn't fit with the agenda from the deep state left, then of course it's not something to worry about. But they can decide when, if, and how. And this is overquoted, but it is like 1984. The Ministry of Truth, to be specific, in 1984, is the propaganda machine, and it puts out what you should know, hear, think, and see. Big Brother is the mechanism that kind of enforces it. And you have other branches in 1984. So, will we see more restrictions? Most likely. Will this ever end? Yes, if something actually happens here politically that we are hoping for. So there's a lot of things going on, and of course, as I always say, it keeps piling on week after week, day after day. So speaking of the virus, let's start in with that. So we hear about case numbers. We hear there's all sorts of case numbers, and it's going up and up. Well, if you look at the world statistics, and you will see the logarithmic scale applied to the death toll. Now, of course, you can either choose to believe the numbers are reported for the death toll or not. There's plenty of evidence that shows these numbers are commingled with many other things. It's been documented. There was a motorcyclist, had a fatal accident. They supposedly tested him after. They chalked it up to a virus death, even though the virus had nothing to do with anything. And like I said before, and many times before, the PCR tests are inaccurate. So we have those issues upon us. Also, the corrupt medical communities in the hospitals get more money for patients of a certain diagnosis. And they know that, and they want to collect. So money drives everything, right? So as far as the case numbers go, people are saying, oh, there's spikes, it's going up in many areas and stuff. Look at the actual death numbers and talk to your friends and family and other people to really get the idea here. But let's put it in perspective, shall we? Let's say that the deep state mainstream media is correct. Let's say walking dead every afternoon in the streets. We don't see that, of course, but it's not reported, but it's what we're led to believe. This is the fear factor, okay? Now, these people, of course, are the same ones that bring you Hollywood blockbusters, okay? So they know exactly what they're doing, and they have good actors and actresses called reporters, and they do a good job. And these people have been instructed with the socialist, Marxist ideas from the university from years back. So they know exactly what they're doing. From the Nazi times of Joseph Goebbels all the way forward. He set the standard that they live by. So let's look at the worldwide death by cause. Of course, number one, cardiovascular. Cancer is number two. Lo and behold, we have respiratory diseases of all kinds at 10,000 daily deaths. Then, as I mentioned before, it goes down. Lower respiratory, dementia is almost 7,000 per day, mind you. This is per day, all over the world. Digestive diseases, 6,500. Neonatal disorders, diarrheal diseases, which I mentioned last time, 4,300 per day. Over 1 million per year die of diarrhea-related illnesses. And to me, that sounds like a pandemic. Diabetes, liver diseases, and you go on and down the list. Now, it's interesting on the lower rankings after the top 10, you have road injuries at 3,000, 3,400, HIV, 2,600, suicide, 2,100, malaria, 1,600 per day, okay? Then we have drowning, 809 per day, okay? So let's take a look in perspectives. If we add up drowning, if we add up suicide, and we add up tuberculosis, and take your choice of either kidney disease or road injuries, either one of those, you've already hit or surpassed the cooked up figures for the daily COVID deaths, okay? And we're not even talking about the big stuff that is the cancer and the heart disease. So how deadly is this? You got to ask yourself those questions, because if you look around at the data, as I've said before many, many times, it just doesn't add up. And then I've actually done this last week some investigative reporting. And I've actually talked to various people in the community and just got some information about people who knew people firsthand. One gentleman said that his grandsons supposedly got sick. He's just relaying it to me. Supposedly were tested, and they tested positive. And what happened? They went back to play outside, okay? And they went about their business, and that was the end of it. There's another person he told me about that was supposedly tested positive, and those people, what did they do? They sat around and watched TV and ate, okay? They didn't really go out because they weren't sure, but they didn't do anything special. And you know what? They're okay, all right? The survival rate is extremely high. This is not Ebola, and this is not the hantavirus or anything else. Hantavirus is a 50% mortality rate. No way to treat it, okay? Once it gets into your lungs, that's it. 50-50, you live or you die. Ebola is even worse. This stuff is nonsense. You can choose to believe it or not, but I believe figures, I look at the figures, and I use common sense. So you can go do your own research, and I highly encourage you to do so, and take a look at this, but look at perspectives of everything. Don't look at what the actors and actresses are telling you to believe, and that's the important thing here. So let's move on a little bit. We have some good news, and that is in the state of Utah. It looks like Burgess Owens has defeated McAdams for a seat in the U.S. House of Representatives, and that's very good news. Burgess Owens is a great guy. I've actually had several patriots from the state of Utah been sending me all kinds of information, and he's definitely a great individual and is going to do great things. So we can be glad for that. And in general, there's also House seat pickups, okay? We have counting, as of this day 10 House seats that have gone to Republicans. Now, I've said before that we maybe need to stop thinking of Republican versus Democrat, but unfortunately, there's still a preponderance of dichotomy between the two that we see here. So, and by the way that the U.S. political system is, it's pretty clear on which party has the Patriots' interest at heart here. So, 10 seats were picked up. That's huge. And if you look at the statistics, you don't see what the mainstream media is reporting. You don't see a preponderance of certain states going for blue when you have the House seats picked up. There was a big disappointment for the leftists in Texas, which did not go blue, and they thought it might this year, but it didn't. Texas is changing, however. I have some patriots that send me information about that every once in a while. It's definitely changing as well. But there's House seats that have been picked up. So that's important. And it's also important for what comes next, possibly. So, of course, last time we spoke about fraud, and that hasn't gone away. There's still fraud within the system. According to the White House press secretary, they have literally hundreds of signed affidavits regarding individuals who have given testimony as far as the fraud, and it seems like it's been building every single day. Now, of course, that's fraud where it's easy to see. There's also hidden fraud, which I'll get into in a moment, and that's your electronic fraud. But if we look at the face value fraud of people committing fraud and helping to commit fraud at the balloting places at the various areas, there's evidence of pressure by certain groups when people went to vote, and that's a whole other issue. But let's look at Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania had over 600,000 ballots that came in late and were allowed because of a decision by the Supreme Court there earlier that allowed this extension. Those should be thrown out. And I say should from a constitutional perspective, because the state's Supreme Court, not the federal Supreme Court, the state's, individual state Supreme Court cannot change what the Constitution says regarding the late ballots, which is you cannot count them, period. This is not election week. This is not election month. This is election day, and that has never changed, and that is something that is supported very clearly in the Constitution. So that's a challenge that I would expect the U.S. Supreme Court would overrule, because there's definitely precedence for this. It's written black and white, and it's very clear as to what one can do as far as voting. Now, the affidavits that come in from people come in from various workers, postal workers. We have, of course, like I mentioned last time, we have late ballots, some that were actually very late that were stamped and postmarked, that they weren't late and sent in. All sorts of fraud. And this has gone on and is even more so. It's kind of interesting because in 2016, 2017, we had people like Nasty Pelosi claiming fraud and various issues with counting and voting. But now, we don't hear that from her, just like other hypocrites. We just don't hear that at the moment. Mere coincidence? You can draw your own conclusions. I think you know better. So the issue in Pennsylvania is not just that there's a bunch of absentee ballots that came in. There's over 600,000 absentee ballots that were counted without inspection by observers. Now, if you remember, or maybe you don't, but I'm going to let you know, that there were Republican observers were locked out of mail ballot counting. They could not get anywhere near enough to be able to see. They could not see if, for instance, the envelope had maybe 15, 20, 30 of the same person voting. They were purposely locked out and pushed away. I think the closest they could be was 20 feet. I understand, but I need to clarify that. The point is they were not able to observe the ballots that came in. 600,000 ballots. And lo and behold, these ballots apparently were for Biden because the vote count, according to the tabulation of the machine, just skyrocketed up at that point. Coincidence? Well, I guess if you're a complete idiot, yeah. If you think that this happens all the time, yeah. If you're a complete idiot, yes, that falls in line. If you're bought off by the mainstream media and believe everything they tell you, yeah, this is perfectly reasonable and logical. Why? Because the guy or the woman on TV is telling you, and they're dressed nicely, they have makeup on, and they sound and look intelligent, okay? Do you ever see reporters up there that are just shoveled, that just get out of bed and stumble with their words? Do you really see that? No, there's a reason for that. And they want you to believe that these people are the true sources. That being said, do not deal in Fox anymore. Sorry, I mentioned this before. Fox News, forget it. Okay, Newsmax is a good source for your information. There's others out there. But Newsmax is nationally televised, and it's on many channels throughout the United States, satellites, I believe. That's what everybody tells me. And it's online as well. I don't get anything from Newsmax. I'm just passing this along because they're good. So, anyway, let's get into the real thing here. We'll talk about the Dominion machines in a second, but let's talk about what might happen going forward. Well, I mentioned this before, but let's look at Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution. The Electoral College elects our presidents. I've said that before, okay? The idiots on TV don't. Neither does the popular vote. So that happens on December 14th, okay? There's a tie-in with January 6th, though, regarding this. Some states, such as Michigan, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, North Carolina, have GOP majorities in their state legislatures. The state legislator can simply assert that they will only cast the ballots for the actual winner as of midnight election day. Regardless of what they want to say about late ballots coming in, the legislators can say, no, we're not going to do that. So that's one thing that could happen. One slate needs to be certified by governor, the other by GOP state legislature. So it is possible that the legislators could go ahead and choose Trump. That's one thing. But now, of course, there's other things. This could go to the House, and there was an Electoral Count Act of 1887, okay? The decision could go to the House on the day January 6th, where each state gets to vote once. Democrats have a few more members in the U.S. House. However, 31 states are the GOP majority in the U.S. House, where only 19 have a Democrat majority. Again, if it goes that way, Trump wins. Now, there's something interesting about this, and that is between January 6th and 20th, if it goes that direction, okay, in the Senate, by the way, which gets one vote per state, the GOP has a majority. Again, Trump wins. But January 6th through 20th, if there's a deadlock, in that case, the House Majority Leader, Nasty Pelosi herself, acts as President pro temp until the impasse has been settled. That's a scary thought, but anyway, that is one possibility in the interim. Thankfully, it's only for a short period. The Supreme Court obviously is going to get involved. We've said that for a while. We've seen it. We've seen it before with the Gore-Bush election, Bush v. Gore 2000. So that throws all kinds of possibilities into it as well, too. They could throw out the extensions that are issued by the governors or election boards, neither of which is constitutionally authorized, like I was saying before. Again, Trump would win. because you have all these ballots that came in after, and they're either 100% Biden or 98.9% roughly. Of course, we need to recount them, and that also brings up the recount. In the recount, okay, it's if you're recounting fake ballots and ones that came in illegitimately, it doesn't help, okay? So let's be clear on that. That would only help in terms of somebody not voting, not putting in votes for Trump, possibly. But I think the problem comes before then, is more systemic than just somebody, slipping one in the machine and not the other. They couldn't easily do that, except in Pennsylvania, where observers are locked out. Because of course that makes perfect sense. Why would you want observers observing you? Well, if you're doing anything criminally, then you probably want it. I mean, this is not rocket science, okay? This is common sense. So there are a lot of possibilities for what's going to happen. And of course, I said like last time, you can expect a storm of ages to happen after that. But let's talk about Dominion. So the Dominion voting systems, the word Dominion itself, if you look into it, means absolute control and authority. Kind of weird, don't you think? At least I do. So there's several companies that have the voting systems. Dominion is a huge player. Well, it turns out Dominion has ties to the Clinton Foundation. The company has used lobbying firms to employ lobbyists with ties to Georgia's Republican governor and the House Speaker, Nasty Pelosi. So you've also have some of the components in the machine have been sourced from China. And by the way, this is not just the LCD screen that they like to talk about, it's more. And there's also firms that are tied with George Soros and Robert Mueller about these components from China. Very interesting. And lastly, a former ambassador named by thankfully, President Obama himself sits on the board of a company that acquired Dominion in 2018. Coincidence? Yeah, there again, it depends on how a person doesn't want to believe truth. It depends on how you want to look at things, sure. But they have a large market share. There's other companies out there, but Dominion's actually pretty large as far as it goes. So we have these other tie-ins with these people. And in Texas, the state of Texas has rejected Dominion in 2020 for its elections. And they said it was rejected 3 times by data communications experts from the Texas Secretary of State and Attorney General's office because it failed to meet basic security standards. So basically, they didn't want a machine that was sitting there getting hacked left and right, being changed, having the votes changed, having the software changed out on it, and they avoided it altogether. But now we're seeing the fruits from some of those issues. So there was a technology glitch according to Political. However, the company uploaded a patch the night before. The election supervisor has been quoted in Spalding County saying that this is something that they don't ever do. I've never seen them update anything the day before elections. So now we have software that was implanted, we have the admin access that can be hacked into, and we have players like Nasty Pelosi that are all part of this that have interest in the company. And this is something that really needs to be fully investigated, and we cannot stand and just have this go by, because this one slips by and it gets worse and worse. The Ministry of Truth, as in 1984, can easily then do whatever they want, as we've seen with the voting flips from Biden to Trump. Simple software, at a certain point, you add up a certain amount, and you simply flip the vote. Very easy, very, very simple. Somebody can implant whatever they want to in the machines by taking admin. This upload, we don't even know what it was or what it did, another avenue for fraud, but we definitely have evidence that's piling up that is going to be looked into. And it's interesting to note that as far as the Sharpie, I think you've heard in Maricopa County that Sharpies were used, and Dominion said, oh no, it's fine, no, the machine can read all that, and nothing to worry about it. But in 2019, there was documented issues with using the Sharpies and having it bleed through. I believe it was Jefferson County, if I am correct. And the problem was that the Sharpies bled through and invalidated the ballots. So all the people who they knew were going to be voting for Trump in one area, they handed them Sharpies in order to mark it, so they could definitely be rejected by the machine. So, and not counted. Convenient, isn't it? So, we have all these issues. We have many things that are still piling up. There's no resolution yet. I've mentioned the different avenues that are possible, and one of the big ones in Pennsylvania is something that I really think that one will be turned around. The other ones, hopefully, that the fraud can be documented and shown, and we have a lot of the evidence, and hopefully that will bring about the changes to make the situation correct, right the wrongs. And of course the left is saying, oh, this is a coup attempt, everything else, but of course they're projecting because they've committed the coup attempt, or pending coup attempt, I should say. So whenever you start to realize that somebody might be onto you, or you're losing, or whatever it is, you do the projection. It's a simple technique. So if things get turned around, we're going to see a lot more activity out there. And of course, once things go forward, which is still going to take quite a bit of time, and like I said before, we might be looking into January before this is resolved. It's very possible. So there's a lot of avenues for Trump to restore his rightful win, and I think when all the fraud's taken out of it, it'll be clear to see. However, we're not there yet, and we must pray, we must be perseverant, we must educate ourselves, and we must be willing to debate people on this. When the sheeple, whoever it is, family, friends, comes up to you and says, oh, really, yeah, because there's no question that Biden has won, the presidency. Well, yes, there is question, and he hasn't won anything. Okay, the Electoral College has not voted. I've said this time and time again. Educate the sheeple. Hopefully some of them will be able to wake up. Hopefully some of them can be salvageable. You can, I believe it's Abraham Lincoln that said, you can fool some of the people all the time, all the people some of the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time. So hopefully that through our efforts we can enlighten people, friends and family, whoever we come across, and we can make a change, because we don't want the kind of changes that the left and the deep state is bringing on. And I just wanted to say that the change that we are seeing throughout MAGA is not so much just Trump. Trump made it into a person that we could connect with. Although Reagan did coin the phrase first, let's make America great again, in his campaign, we still have the Making America Great. And that is an entity and a life force of its own, it seems. And as we go forward, regardless of what happens in this outcome, the concepts behind MAGA, patriotism, United States first, prayer, what we believe in God and belief in family, these things will go forward and will get stronger. And finally, we are doing it. And we'll talk next time right here on the Mr. Chris Show Underground News and Commentary.